The leather suitcase arced through the bright September air, a dark projectile against the vibrant green of Lake Juniper. My daughter-in-law Sloane didn't even glance back. Her silver sedan roared to life, spitting gravel, and vanished in a cloud of dust, leaving only an unnatural quiet. I scrambled to the muddy bank, the earth sucking at my feet, and wrestled the waterlogged suitcase from the lake's grip. My hands trembled, threatening to betray me. Then I heard it, a faint muffled sound from inside. "Please, God, don't let it be what I think," I whispered, my fingers fumbling with the stubborn, wet zipper. It snarled, then gave way, and in that instant, my heart simply stopped. What lay within chilled me deeper than any Georgia autumn, a cold I hadn't felt in all my 63 years. My name is Eleanor Whitlock, though everyone calls me Ellie. 63 years of life and 8 months living alone since I buried my only child, Marcus. This old house nestled by the lake had once echoed with laughter. Now it swallowed sound, vast and too quiet. That afternoon, the last of my sweet tea was cooling on the porch railing when Sloane's car appeared, a silver blur barreling down the dirt road, kicking up a rooster tail of dust. She was driving like a demon, far too fast for the winding path. A cold dread began to coil in my stomach. I squinted, trying to make sense of the chaos. Sloane slammed on the brakes at the water's edge, the engine still thrumming. She burst from the car as if pursued by a phantom, her face flushed, hair a wild storm. She ripped open the trunk with a violence that made me wince, as if she meant to tear the metal itself. And there it was, the brown leather suitcase, the one I'd given her on her wedding day, whispering, "To carry your dreams wherever you go." Foolish words, I thought now. Sloane dragged the bag out. It was heavy. I saw the strain in her shoulders, the tremor in her arms. She cast a quick, furtive glance around, a flicker of raw guilt in her eyes. I'll never forget that look. "Sloane," I yelled from the porch, but either she didn't hear or chose not to. She stumbled to the water's edge, each step a struggle, as if weighted by an invisible burden. She swung the case once, twice, then with a guttural grunt, launched it into the lake. The splash ripped through the afternoon's stillness. The bag bobbed for a terrifying moment, then began its slow, dreadful descent. Sloane sprinted back to her car. The engine roared, tires shrieked, and she was gone, leaving only swirling dust and a profound, terrifying silence. I stood frozen, the scene replaying in a gruesome loop. Sloane, the suitcase, the lake, the sheer desperation in her movements. A shiver, colder than any autumn breeze, snaked down my spine. My legs moved before my mind could catch up, propelling me off the porch, across the yard, and onto the muddy bank. The lake, barely 300 feet away, seemed a mile. I ran like I hadn't run in years, my knees screaming, my lungs burning, but I didn't stop. When I reached the shore, gasping for breath, my heart hammered like a trapped bird. The suitcase was still there, a dark stain on the water, slowly sinking. I waded in without hesitation. The lake's chill bit into my skin, much colder than I expected, rising to my knees, then my waist. The silty bottom sucked at my bare feet. I grasped a handle, pulling. It was impossibly heavy. I yanked harder, my arms shaking, water splashing my face, soaking my clothes. Finally, I dragged it toward the bank. That's when the sound came again, a weak, muffled cry from within. My blood ran cold. No, it couldn't be. "Please, God, don't let it be what I think," I pleaded, pulling faster, driven by a raw, primal panic. I hauled the case onto the wet sand and sank to my knees beside it. My trembling fingers scrabbled for the zipper. It was jammed, wet, rusted. My fingers slipped. "Come on." Come on, I muttered through gritted teeth, tears blurring my vision. I forced it once, twice. It finally gave. I lifted the lid, and the world stopped. My heart ceased its frantic rhythm. Air locked in my throat. My hands flew to my mouth, stifling a scream that would have torn the quiet afternoon apart. There, wrapped in a soaked powder blue blanket, was a baby. A newborn, impossibly tiny, fragile, and utterly still. His lips were blue, his skin pale as wax, eyes closed, no movement. Oh my God! Oh my God! No! My hands shook so violently I could barely lift him. I scooped him from the suitcase with a tenderness I hadn't known I still possessed. He was cold, so cold. He weighed less than a bag of sand, his tiny head fitting in the palm of my hand. His umbilical cord was tied off with ordinary twine, not a medical clamp as if born in secret, unwitnessed, unhelped. No, 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 I whispered, pressing my ear to his chest. Silence. Nothing. I pressed my cheek to his nose, then the faintest puff of air, so weak I almost missed it. But it was there, barely breathing, but breathing. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the baby to my chest, my legs threatening to buckle. I ran toward the house faster than I'd ever run, water streaming from my soaked clothes, my bare feet cut and bleeding on the rough path. But I felt no pain, only terror, only urgency, only the desperate, consuming need to save the tiny, trembling life against my skin. I burst into the house screaming. I don't know what I yelled. Help? Jesus? Nothing coherent, perhaps. I grabbed the old rotary phone, cradling the baby with my other arm. My fingers fumbled, slipping on the keys, nearly dropping the receiver twice before I punched 911. 911, what is your emergency? A calm female voice. A baby. I found a baby in the lake. He's not responding. He's cold. He's blue. Please, please send help. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Tell me your address. I stammered out the address near Lake Juniper. The operator instructed me to place the baby on a flat surface. With one sweep of my arm, I cleared the kitchen table dishes, papers, everything crashing to the floor. Nothing mattered. I laid him there, so small, so fragile, so still. Is he breathing? I shrieked, my voice a high, unrecognizable sound. You tell me, look at his chest. Is it moving? I leaned in, searching for the nearly imperceptible rise and fall. Yes, I think so. Very shallow. Okay, listen closely. I'm going to guide you. Get a clean towel, dry the baby gently, then wrap him warm. The ambulance is already on its way. I did as I was told, grabbing towels from the bathroom. My hands, clumsy with terror, dried his tiny body. Every second stretched into an eternity. Wrapped tightly, I picked him up again, cradling him against my chest. I began to rock, an ancient instinct I thought I'd forgotten. Hold on, little one, I whispered. Please hold on. They're coming. They're coming to help you. The minutes until the ambulance arrived were the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor, the baby pressed to my chest, humming a tuneless, wordless song. Perhaps one I'd sung to Marcus. Perhaps just the sound of a desperate heart. I just needed him to know he wasn't alone, that someone held him, that someone wanted him to live. Sirens tore through the silence, red and white lights flashing through the windows. I ran to the door. 2 paramedics jumped out. An older man with a gray beard and a younger woman with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. She took the baby from my arms with an efficiency that broke my heart. She examined him quickly, stethoscope to his tiny chest. Her face was impassive, but her shoulders tensed perceptibly. Severe hypothermia, possible aspiration, she told her partner. We need to move now. They placed him on a small gurney, an oxygen mask over his little face. Hands moved with practiced speed, connecting wires, monitors, contraptions I didn't understand. The man looked at me. "Are you coming with us?" It wasn't a question. I climbed into the ambulance, sinking onto the small side seat, my eyes fixed on the baby, so tiny amidst the gleaming equipment. The ambulance roared to life, sirens wailing, the world blurring past the windows. "How did you find him?" the paramedic asked, her eyes still on her work. "In a suitcase, in the lake. I saw someone throw it in." She met my gaze, then looked at her partner. I saw it concern, yes, but also a flicker of suspicion, perhaps pity. "Did you see who it was?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Sloane, my daughter-in-law, Marcus's widow, who had wept at his funeral as if her world had ended. The same woman who had just tried to drown a baby. How could I say it? How could I even believe it myself? "Yes," I finally said, the word a raw whisper. "I saw who it was." 15 minutes later, we burst through the double doors of the Atlanta Medical Center ER. A dozen people in white and green scrubs swarmed the gurney, shouting numbers, medical terms, urgent orders. They rushed the baby through another set of doors. I tried to follow, but a nurse stopped me. "Ma'am, you need to stay here. The doctors are working. We need some information." She led me to a waiting room, cream-colored walls, hard plastic chairs, the pervasive smell of disinfectant. I sank onto a chair, shaking from head to toe. From the cold of my wet clothes, perhaps. Or the shock. Probably both. The nurse sat across from me, older, perhaps my age. Her name tag read Nurse Diane, kind wrinkles fanned from her eyes. "I'm going to need you to tell me everything that happened," she said softly. And so, the story of Sloane, the suitcase, and the tiny life within began to spill out. "The police will want to speak with you," Diane said, her voice a low thrum against the buzzing silence of the hospital room. She'd listened to my frantic account without interruption, her tablet cool and impersonal in her hands, only now exhaling a deep, shuddering breath. "This is attempted homicide, maybe worse." Attempted homicide. The words took flight in my mind, dark and ominous as crows circling a fresh kill. My daughter-in-law, my son's wife, a murderer. The enormity of it simply wouldn't compute. How could I even begin to understand? Diane's hand, warm and firm, covered mine. "You did the right thing, Eleanor. You saved a life today." But that wasn't how it felt. It felt like I'd ripped open a wound, uncovered something unspeakable I couldn't shove back into the darkness, something that would change everything irrevocably. 2 hours crawled by before a doctor appeared, barely 35, his youth betrayed by the deep bruised circles under his eyes and hands that carried the acrid ghost of antibacterial soap. "The baby is stable," he began, his voice flat with exhaustion. "He's in the neonatal ICU, suffered severe hypothermia, aspirated water. His lungs are compromised. The next 48 hours are critical." "Is he going to live?" The question ripped from my throat, raw and broken. He didn't flinch. "I don't know," he said, his honesty a brutal blow. "We're doing everything we can." The Fulton County Sheriff's Department arrived a half-hour later. Detective Sergeant Ava Johnson, mid-40s, hair pulled back in a severe bun, and a younger, silent partner scribbling notes. Ava's dark eyes, sharp and unwavering, seemed to bore straight through any facade, stripping away pretense. They asked the same questions over and over, twisting them with subtle variations. I described the car, the exact time, the glint of the suitcase, Sloane's movements, every agonizing detail. Ava watched me, her gaze an unsettling weight that made me feel guilty, even though I'd done nothing wrong. "And you're absolutely certain it was your daughter-in-law?" "Completely, absolutely." Why would she do something like that? I don't know. Where is she now? I don't know. When was the last time you spoke with her before today? 3 weeks ago, on the anniversary of my son's death. Ava's pen scratched across her notepad. Then she exchanged a significant glance with her partner. We'll need you to come to the precinct tomorrow for a formal statement, and you are not, under any circumstances, to contact Sloan. Do you understand? I nodded, mute. What would I even say? Why did you try to kill a baby? Why throw him into the lake like trash? Why? The officers left. Deanne returned, a soft wool blanket draped over her arm, a steaming cup of tea in her hand. You should go home, Eleanor. Get some rest. Change your clothes. But I couldn't. Not while that fragile life, the one I'd held against my chest, the one who'd drawn his last breath of hope in my arms, lay fighting a few rooms away. I stayed, a vigil of one. Diane returned with hospital scrubs, a generous, ill-fitting set, and a baggy t-shirt. In the sterile bathroom mirror, I looked into the eyes of a woman aged a decade in a single afternoon. Sleep didn't come. I watched the clock from the unforgiving plastic chair, each tick a hammer blow. Every hour I asked the nurses, and every hour the same refrain. Stable, critical, fighting. At 3 a.m, Reverend Thomas, my priest from St. Michael's, appeared as if summoned by a silent prayer. He sat beside me, a comforting mass of quiet presence. He didn't speak for a long time, just was. Sometimes that's all you need, proof you're not utterly alone in hell. God tests us in many ways, Eleanor, he finally said, his voice a gentle rumble. This doesn't feel like a test, I replied, my own voice hoarse. It feels like a curse. He simply nodded, his silence more eloquent than any sermon. As dawn painted the waiting room windows in a pale, exhausted orange, I knew nothing would ever be the same. I had crossed a line, seen something I couldn't unsee. Whatever came next, I would face it. That baby, that tiny, gasping spark of life in the next room, had become my responsibility. I hadn't chosen this, but I couldn't abandon him. Not after pulling him from the water, not after feeling his desperate heartbeat against my own. Diane reappeared at 7, a beacon of efficiency, armed with coffee and a foil-wrapped breakfast sandwich. You need to eat something, she insisted, pressing them into my hands. I wasn't hungry, but she stood there, waiting, so I ate. The coffee scalded my tongue. The sandwich tasted of cardboard, but I chewed, I swallowed, performing the ritual of a normal person on a normal morning. The baby's still stable, Diane said, her voice softer as she sat beside me. His body temperature is rising. Lungs are responding to treatment. That's a good sign. Can I see him? She shook her head. Not yet, immediate family only, and we don't even know who the family is. Family. The word hit me like a physical blow. The baby had a mother, Sloan, who'd tried to end his life. But who was the father? Where was he? Why hadn't anyone reported the child missing? The questions piled up, a dizzying, unanswered stack. At 9, Ava returned, alone this time. She took the chair opposite me, a folder in her hands, her expression hard, dissecting. She looked at me as if I was the suspect. Eleanor, I need to ask you a few more questions. I've already told you everything. I know, but some inconsistencies have surfaced. Inconsistencies? The word hung between us, a thinly veiled accusation. My stomach clenched. What kind? Ava slid a photograph across the small table. It was Sloane's car, but not by the lake. This was a supermarket parking lot, 30 minutes away, yesterday at 5:20 p.m., 10 minutes after I'd supposedly seen her at the lake. Impossible, I breathed, staring at the image. It was her car, license plate, every detail. There has to be a mistake. I saw her. I was there. I saw her throw the suitcase. You were sure, Ava stated, a quiet challenge, and even to my own ears, my voice sounded less convincing now. Ava leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Eleanor, I need you to be honest with me. What is your relationship with Sloane? Do you two get along? There it was. The real question, the one that had been lurking beneath the surface since the police arrived. We didn't get along. We never had. From the moment Marcus introduced her, I'd sensed something off too perfect, too calculating, too interested in the tidy sum Marcus earned as an engineer. We're not close, I admitted. Do you blame her for your son's death? What? My voice, shrill and defensive, echoed in the quiet room. It's a simple question. Do you blame Sloane for Marcus's death? The accident. That's what everyone called it. Marcus coming home from dinner with Sloane. Slick roads, a skidding car, an oak tree. Marcus gone instantly. Sloane walking away with minor scratches. It had always felt odd, convenient, but I'd never had proof, just the bitter ash taste of a heartbroken mother looking for someone to blame. I don't see what that has to do with the baby. It has everything to do with it, Ava countered, closing the folder with a snap. Because we haven't been able to locate Sloane. She's vanished. Her house is empty. Her phone is off. And you are the only person who claims to have seen her yesterday. Her words fell like ice water. She was accusing me. Not directly, but the insinuation was a venomous whisper, clear as day. She thought I'd fabricated it all, that I'd found the baby some other way and was blaming Sloane out of vengeance. I didn't lie, I snarled, jaw clenched. I saw what I saw. Then we need to find Sloane, and fast, because if she is this baby's mother, he's in grave danger, and if she's not, then we have an even bigger mystery on our hands. Ava stood, pressing a card into my hand. If you remember anything else, any detail, call me. She walked out, leaving me adrift among a swirling tide of questions. I sat there, the flimsy card a paper-thin anchor, wondering if I was losing my mind. I had seen Sloane, I was sure of it, but doubt, insidious and cold, was seeping in. What if I was wrong? What if my grief, my simmering resentment, had made me see what my heart desperately wanted to believe? Reverend Thomas returned at noon, a rosary clutched in his hands. Shall we pray? He asked. I wasn't religious, never had been, but in that moment I needed something grander than myself, a whisper that I wasn't utterly alone. I nodded. We prayed together, the familiar rhythm of the words a balm, calming something deep inside me. When we finished, I felt a fraction less broken. The police think I'm lying, I confided. The truth always comes out, he replied, his gaze unwavering. Even if it takes time. But we didn't have time. That baby was fighting for his life. And somewhere, Sloane was hiding, or running, or plotting. At 3 that afternoon, a different doctor, an older woman with thick glasses and a grave expression, approached me. We need your authorization to run some tests on the baby, she said, her voice brusque but kind. I'm not family. We know, but you are the only responsible party here. Child Protective Services is on the way, but in the meantime, we need to act. The baby needs blood work. We need to know if he has any medical conditions, if he was exposed to drugs, if he has injuries we haven't detected. I signed the papers, not even reading them fully. I just wanted them to do whatever was necessary to save him. 2 hours later, the social worker arrived, Marcy. Young, too young for a job that dealt in such raw pain, I thought. Perhaps 25, with short, clipped hair and a gray suit that tried to project authority. Her professional smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Miss Whitlock, she began, sitting beside me. I need to ask you some questions about your situation. I understand you found the baby. The story again, the questions again. But Marcy was different. She looked at me not with suspicion, but with pity. And somehow, that was even worse. Do you live alone? Her voice, crisp and formal, cut through the sterile air of the interview room. Yes, I tightened my grip on the worn fabric of my purse. Stable income? My late husband's pension, some savings. The words felt thin, inadequate. Criminal record? Marcy didn't wait for an answer. Mental health issues? Depression? Anxiety? I hesitated. The silence stretched, thin and brittle. After Marcus died, I took antidepressants for 3 months. My doctor said grief sometimes needs chemical help. I stopped when I felt better. I had depression, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. After my son's death. But it passed. Marcy's pen scratched across a pad I couldn't see. The baby will need a temporary home when he's released from the hospital. If he is released, CPS will look for certified foster families. In the meantime, he remains in state custody. State custody. The words shattered something inside me. The baby, whose first breath I'd witnessed, whom I'd cradled against my chest, would become a file, a number, another child lost to the indifferent machinery of the world. What if I wanted to? The question burst from me, raw and unbidden. What if I wanted to care for him? Marcy's gaze flickered from surprise to skepticism. Ms. Whitlock, her voice was firm, almost a reprimand. You are 63, not a certified foster parent, no legal relationship to the baby, and you're involved in an active criminal investigation. I didn't do anything wrong, I countered, heat rising in my cheeks. I saved his life. I know, but the system has protocols. The best interest of the child comes first. And frankly, your age and your recent emotional situation are factors we have to consider. The words landed like a slap. Too old, too unstable, too broken. Maybe she was right. Maybe the idea was madness. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was that fragile, tiny body and an undeniable truth. No one would love him like I could. That night, I went home for the first time in 36 hours. My friend, Diane, had all but pushed me out of the hospital, insisting I needed a shower, a real bed. She promised they'd call if anything changed. The sun dipped below the horizon as I drove, painting the lake on my right in streaks of fire. I stopped at the exact spot where I'd seen Sloan, where I'd pulled out the suitcase. The patrol cars were gone, the police having taken the evidence. But my footprints remained, ghosted in the dried mud. I stood there as darkness swallowed the last vestiges of daylight, wondering if I'd ever know the truth, if Sloan was watching from some hidden place, wondering what the hell had really happened. Then my phone screamed. My heart slammed against my ribs. It was the hospital. Miss Whitlock, Diane's voice, tight with urgency, pierced the silence. You need to come back now. I broke every speed limit, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, my pulse roaring louder than the engine. Diane's clipped words, "Come back now," had sliced through any pretense of calm, filling my mind with the darkest scenarios. He was gone. His tiny body, after 2 days of fighting, had finally given out. I hadn't been fast enough. I flung the car into 2 parking spaces and ran, every muscle screaming, toward the emergency doors. Diane waited, her face grave. But there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't decipher. "He's alive," she said instantly, as if she'd read the terror etched across my face. "The baby is alive, but you have to come with me." She led me through unfamiliar corridors, the sterile light reflecting off polished floors. An elevator ascended to the 3rd floor, past the quiet hum of the NICU, and finally, we reached a small conference room. Inside sat Detective Ava, Marcy, the social worker, and a man I didn't recognize. He wore a dark suit, glasses, and the weary, sharp lines of a lawyer. "Please sit down," Ava directed, gesturing to a chair. My legs felt like jelly. I sank onto the cold plastic, aware of their collective gaze, an intensity that made me want to bolt. "We received the results of the baby's DNA analysis," Ava stated, her words dropping like pebbles into a still pond. "DNA? Why? What were they looking for?" "And?" The word was a bare whisper, torn from me when the silence became unbearable. Ava exchanged a look with the man in the suit. He nodded, opening a folder. Printed sheets slid across the table toward me. "The baby is a boy, born approximately 3 days ago, according to medical exams." Ava paused, her gaze holding mine. "And, Ellie, he is your grandson." The world tilted. "Grandson? Impossible. Marcus died 8 months ago. No children, no hidden pregnancies, nothing." "That's impossible," I breathed, shaking my head. "The results are conclusive," the man in the suit said, his voice calm, professional. "I'm Dr. Ernest Sato, a specialist in forensic genetics. We ran the tests twice to be sure. The baby shares approximately 25% of his DNA with you. He is definitively your biological grandson, Marcus's son." "Marcus's son? My Marcus?" A phantom blow struck my chest. Marcus had a son he never knew, a son someone had tried to drown. But how? My voice sounded distant, alien. "Marcus died 8 months ago. Sloane never mentioned a pregnancy." "Exactly." Ava leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Sloane was pregnant at the time of the accident. According to our calculations, she conceived about a month before Marcus's death, which means she knew." The room spun. Sloane knew. She was carrying Marcus's child when he died. Why the silence? Why hide a 9-month pregnancy, give birth in secret, then try to kill her own baby? "I don't understand," I stammered, tears blurring my vision. "Why would she do that? He's her son, Marcus's son." "That's what we have to find out," Ava said, her tone grim. "But there's more, Ellie. I need you to listen very carefully." I braced myself, a cold dread washing over me. Whatever came next would be worse. "We've been investigating your son's accident. There are inconsistencies, major inconsistencies." "What kind?" "Marcus's car was examined after the crash. The official report blamed a skid due to rain, but we requested a new review. They found evidence of manipulation in the brakes." Ava's voice dropped, each word a hammer blow. "Someone sabotaged them." Sabotage. Murder. My son hadn't died in an accident. He had been murdered. "Sloane," I whispered. "It wasn't a question." "She's our primary suspect," Ava confirmed. "But we need proof, and we need to find her. She's completely disappeared. Her phone hasn't been used. Her bank account's untouched. It's like she vanished into thin air." I pushed myself up, needing to move, to breathe. I walked to the window, the city lights glittering below, a million tiny points of normal life, while I was trapped in this nightmare. "My son," I whispered to the glass, a raw ache in my chest. "My baby, she killed him." No one spoke. There was nothing to say. A gentle hand rested on my shoulder. "Marcy, there's one more thing you need to know," she said softly. "About the baby, about his future." I turned. Her eyes, though kind, held a deep sadness. "Given that the baby is your biological grandson, you have legal rights. You can apply for custody." She raised a hand as I started to speak. "It will be a long process. Evaluations, home visits, psychological interviews. And in the meantime, the baby will remain in state care." "No!" The word erupted, a guttural roar. "You're not taking him from me. He's all I have left of Marcus. He's my grandson, my blood. I understand, Marcy soothed. Believe me, I do, but the system has protocols. After everything that's happened, we have to ensure the baby's safety. He'll be safer with me, I pleaded, than with any stranger. Perhaps, but that decision is not up to me. It's up to a judge, and the child's well-being comes first. Dr. Sato spoke for the first time since his revelation. There's another factor we must consider. The baby suffered severe trauma, hypothermia, near drowning. The next few weeks will be critical for his development. He will need specialized care, therapy, constant medical monitoring. I'll do whatever it takes, I vowed. Whatever. Ava rose, her gaze unwavering. Ellie, I need you to understand one thing. You are not a suspect. We believe your story, but you can't simply keep the baby because he's your grandson. There is a legal process, and in the meantime, our priority is finding Sloan. We need your help. How? Think. Sloan. Did she ever mention any special place, any property, any friend or relative she might be hiding with? I closed my eyes. 3 years. 3 years Sloan had been married to Marcus, and our conversations had always been superficial. She never spoke of her family, her past, as if she had sprung from nowhere the day she met Marcus. She has an aunt, I heard myself say, the words surfacing from some forgotten corner of my memory. Up north, near the border, Marcus mentioned it once. He said Sloan grew up with her in a place called Tucson. Ava scribbled furiously. Name? I don't know. Marcus never said. It's a start, Ava said. We'll investigate. Everyone left but Diane. She remained, a quiet anchor in the cold, empty room. Do you want to see your grandson? She asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She led me through a maze of security doors to the NICU. I scrubbed my hands, pulled on a sterile gown, and followed her to an incubator tucked in a corner. And there he was, my grandson. Marcus's son, so impossibly small, fragile, a tangle of tubes and wires, but alive, breathing, fighting. He had Marcus's dark hair, Marcus's nose, even Marcus's long, elegant fingers. Can I touch him? I whispered, my throat tight. Yes, just be gentle. I slid my hand through the opening, my fingers trembling as they reached his tiny palm. It was so soft, impossibly warm. His small fingers curled around my index finger, a reflex, but it felt like a promise. Hello, little one, I whispered, tears finally falling. I'm your grandma, and I promise I'm going to protect you. No one will ever hurt you again. I swear it on your father's memory. The soft press of Diane's hand on Alara Vance's shoulder anchored her. He needs a name, Diane murmured, her voice a gentle current in the sterile quiet. For the hospital records, until we find his mother or a judge steps in. Ilara's gaze was fixed on the tiny form curled within the incubator, a fragile breath of life in a world suddenly stripped bare. Her son, Marcus, had always spoken of his firstborn boy. If I have a son, he'd confided one Christmas evening, his eyes alight with a future he would never see. I'll call him Elijah, after your father. The name, a whispered promise carried on the December air, now tasted like ash and hope. Elijah, Ilara said, the sound a rough tremor in her throat. His name is Elijah. That night, the hospital room became a sanctuary. She sat beside the incubator, a silent vigil, her calloused fingers gently clasping his minuscule hand. She sang the old lullabies, the ones she'd hummed to Marcus years ago, each note a fragile bridge across the gaping chasm of her grief. She promised Elijah a future, though her own felt shattered, a vow whispered into the hushed glow of the monitors. Because now the truth was a cold, hard stone in her gut. This baby was not a stranger. He was her blood, her family, the last echo of her murdered son. And she would let no one, not the faceless system, not the phantom woman named Sloane, take him. The days blurred into a bureaucratic nightmare. Each dawn, Elara rose at 5, the ritual of shower and dress a numb automatic scroll. The hospital became her second home, Elijah's incubator, her anchor. By afternoon, the procession began, lawyers with their clipped questions, social workers with their sympathetic yet scrutinizing eyes, police officers tracing lines of inquiry on official forms, all of them a tribunal weighing her worthiness to raise a ghost. On the third day, a woman named Marcy arrived, her voice a monotone drone, as if reciting from an appliance manual. "You will need a criminal background check," she began, ticking off items on a printed list. "A complete psychological evaluation, a medical exam, income verification, a home inspection, personal references from at least 3 non-family members, and you must complete a 40-hour childcare course." 40 hours. Elara simply nodded, accepting the paper like a sentence. Had she not raised a son to adulthood? Did she not know the scent of formula, the deftness required for a diaper? Yet, she swallowed the protest, a bitter bile rising in her throat. "How long will this take?" she asked, the words barely a whisper. Marcy's gaze was flat. "If you're lucky, 6 weeks. If not, 3 months. 3 months. 3 months for Elijah to be swallowed by the foster care system, while she wrestled with red tape. And him, in the meantime? Once released, he'll go to a certified temporary foster family. He'll receive proper care. You'll be allowed to visit twice a week under supervision. Twice a week under supervision. As if she were a threat, rather than the woman who had pulled him from the churning water. That night, Reverend Thomas was her first call. References. Proof that she was sane, capable, deserving. The next morning, he sat in her kitchen, sipping the same tea she'd made for Marcus as a boy. "Of course I'll help you, Elara," he said, his voice a balm. "You're one of the strongest women I know. This child is lucky to have you." But Elara didn't feel strong. She felt the heavy hand of 63 years, the ache of loss, the chilling grip of fear. How would she chase a 2-year-old at 65? Help with homework at 70? Make it to his graduation at 80? "I'm too old for this," she confessed, the admission raw and sudden. Reverend Thomas met her gaze over the rim of his cup. "Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to Isaac. Age is just a number, Elara, when love is involved." She wanted to believe him, desperately. On the 4th day, Diane, a nurse whose eyes held a deep, quiet kindness, taught her how to hold Elijah, how to support his impossibly small head, change his miniature diapers, prepare his formula to the precise, comforting warmth. Elara's hands trembled, remembering the terrifying fragility of newborns, their absolute dependence. "You're doing great," Diane insisted, each time Elara stiffened with panic. But it felt less like greatness, more like walking a tightrope over a chasm. One wrong move and everything would collapse. The 5th day brought Ava, the detective, her face etched with a new intensity. "We found Sloane's aunt," she announced, the words hanging heavy in the air. 60 miles from the border near Tucson. She hasn't seen Sloane in 2 years. Said they had a fight. Sloane owed her $3,000. Money. It was always money with Sloane. Marcus, her brilliant engineer, had made a good living, $7,000 a month. He had savings, a $200,000 life insurance policy. Sloane was the beneficiary. "Did she receive the insurance?" Elara asked, the question a dry rasp. Ava nodded. 4 months ago, $200,000 deposited. 2 weeks later, she transferred everything to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. We're tracing it, but it's complex. $200,000. the cold, hard currency of Marcus's life, now hidden in some sun-drenched tax haven while Sloane plotted against his child. Why? Elara demanded, the question that had clawed at her waking and sleeping hours. Why kill the baby? Adoption? A hospital? Why try to drown him? Ava paused, a long, heavy silence. We have a theory, she finally said. We looked into Marcus's finances. 2 weeks before he died, he changed his will. Everything to his future children, not to Sloane, to his children. The air left Elara's lungs in a silent gasp. Marcus knew. Somehow he had known. He'd changed the will to protect his son. She killed him for money, Elara whispered, the realization a bitter acid in her mouth. We believe so, Ava confirmed, and then she discovered the money would go to the baby if he was born alive. So she decided to eliminate him too. The sheer clinical malice of it stole Elara's voice. She had murdered Marcus, carried the child to term, given birth alone, then tried to drown her own baby, all for money. Do you have enough to arrest her? When we find her, yes, but she's still missing. She's smart. She knows we're looking. Days bled into weeks. Elijah grew stronger, a testament to pure, stubborn will. Each tube was removed, his tiny body reclaiming itself. He breathed, fed, cried with a lusty, healthy force. A medical miracle, the doctors said, given what he'd endured. But Elara knew it was more than medicine. It was Marcus's spirit, blazing in that tiny form, fighting, surviving, refusing to yield. Elara completed each requirement, one painstaking step after another. The background check, clean, the medical exam, healthy for her age. The psychological evaluation was the cruelest, a young woman with sharp glasses probing for 3 hours. How did you cope with your son's death? How do you feel about Sloane? Are you trying to replace Marcus with this baby? That last question stung. I'm not replacing anyone, Elara said, her voice tight. I'm saving my grandson. It's different. The woman simply scribbled, impassive. The home inspection a humiliating invasion. 2 women dissecting every corner of her life, checking closets, measuring windows, counting smoke detectors. You'll need a certified crib, a changing table, safety gates, cabinet locks, outlet covers. $800, money she didn't have, spent on baby gear. Her pension barely covered her own needs, but her savings, the last refuge, were now Elijah's. He was worth it. The childcare course was purgatory. 15 young mothers, their eyes sketching judgment, while a 25-year-old instructor droned on about basics Elara had mastered decades ago. Babies eat every 3 hours. They cry when hungry or wet. Never shake a baby. Elara nodded, took notes, swallowing the urge to scream that she had raised a child, that she knew, but she needed that certificate. So pride was swallowed and pretense worn. 6 weeks after pulling Elijah from the lake, Marcy reappeared at the hospital, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. You've completed all requirements, she said. The judge will review your case next week. If all goes well, you could have temporary custody in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 42 days of bureaucratic hell, and now, home. But that very night, as hope flickered, the phone rang. It was Ava, her voice taut, urgent. Elara, I need you at the precinct. Now. We found something. Something about Marcus you need to see. A cold knot tightened in Elara's stomach as she entered the precinct. Ava met her at the entrance, her face grim. They walked down narrow, echoing halls to an interrogation room. On the table, a cardboard box lay open. Inside, Marcus's wallet, his watch, his shattered phone. The ghost relics returned to her after the accident. What is this? Elara asked, her voice an unnatural calm. We finally unlocked his phone. Ava said, her gaze steady. Our technician worked weeks. We found something. She produced a manila envelope, spilling printed sheets across the table screenshots of text messages between Marcus and Sloane, dated 2 weeks before his death. Ilara read the first, from Marcus to Sloane. We need to talk. Found out about the baby. Sloane's reply, I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus again. I found the pregnancy test in the bathroom. Why didn't you tell me? A 3-hour silence then. I wasn't ready to tell you. I was scared. Scared of what? I'm your husband. We're going to be parents. This is wonderful. Another silence, then stark and damning. I don't want to have it. I want to travel, live, not be tied down to a baby. It's our son. It's not a mistake. Don't say that, please. We can make it work. I'll help you. My mother will help us. I don't want help. I want my life back. The messages spiraled, Marcus pleading, Sloane's resistance hardening, until the final exchange, the day before his death. Marcus. Sloane, I spoke with a lawyer. If you decide not to have the baby, I'm divorcing you. And if you have it and don't want to raise it, I'll fight for full custody. I'm not going to let you hurt my son. Sloane, Marcus, you're going to regret this. Marcus, is that a threat? There was no reply. The next day, Marcus was dead. The papers slipped from Ilara's trembling fingers. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unstoppable. She killed him, she choked out, the guttural sound of a mother's agony. She killed him because he was going to protect the baby. That's what we believe, Ava confirmed, her voice low. And there's more. We checked Sloane's phone records from that week. The phone felt heavy in Eleanor Whitlock's hand, each of the 3 calls to Calvin Jones a fresh twist of the knife. When the detectives finally brought him in for questioning, he was a stone wall, until they laid the bank statements on the table, $2,000 wired from Sloane's account to his the day before the accident. The silence in the interrogation room was thick enough to choke on. Then he cracked. Calvin confessed. Sloane had paid him to cut Marcus's brake lines. The words hung in the air, a venomous fog, making Elena's stomach clench. She had to sit. Her son, Marcus, murdered. Not an accident, but a meticulously planned execution. And the monstrous irony? He died trying to protect his unborn child. That child, her grandson, Elijah, now clung to life in a sterile hospital incubator. A tiny warrior against the very mother who had tried to silence his cries forever. Why, Calvin? Elena's voice was a raw whisper. Debts. Gambled away $15,000 to men who played for keeps. Sloane's $2,000 up front, with $3,000 more promised, had been a lifeline he couldn't refuse. Now he was an accomplice to murder, behind bars. Sloane, however, remained a ghost. A warrant for first-degree murder and attempted homicide meant nothing when the killer vanished into thin air. What happens now? Elena finally asked, the cold linoleum seeping into her bones. We keep looking, the detective replied, his gaze unwavering. Her photos at every airport, every border. Hospitals have alerts for anyone trying to change their appearance. Someone will recognize her. No one disappears forever. But Elena wasn't convinced. Sloane, she realized with a chilling certainty, was a predator far more cunning than anyone had imagined. If she had orchestrated Marcus's murder with such chilling precision, she would have had an equally elaborate escape plan. That night, Elena returned to Elijah's bedside. He lay so impossibly small, so utterly oblivious to the terror that shadowed his fragile existence. His very life had cost his father everything, and his mother had been its most direct threat. Now, Elena was the only shield between him and a system that saw him as just another case file. Your daddy loved you, little one. she whispered, her voice cracking. He died protecting you. I'm going to finish what he started, I promise. Diane, the compassionate hospital nurse, appeared with a steaming cup of coffee. She sat beside Elena, a silent presence until she finally spoke. I heard about the messages. I'm so sorry. Elena's gaze drifted to the sleeping infant. I never knew Marcus could be so strong. He was always so gentle, so kind-hearted. But in those messages, he was a warrior, ready to fight for his son. Love does that, Diane murmured, her eyes soft. It makes you stronger than you ever thought possible. Diane was right. Elena felt it now, this unfamiliar wellspring of resilience. She, who had never considered herself particularly strong, was now battling a bureaucratic system, racing against time, pursuing a fugitive killer, all for this tiny, vulnerable life. The following days blurred into a flurry of preparation. Marcus's room, once a sanctuary of youthful rebellion, was meticulously transformed. The rock band posters, the football trophies, the college photos, all carefully packed away. The walls, once vibrant with adolescence, were painted a soothing, soft yellow. Elena assembled the crib, the changing table, the musical mobile that promised lullabies and dreams. It was a painful dismantling of memories, but a necessary one. Marcus was gone. Elijah was here. He needed a place to grow. Reverend Thomas came to bless the room, his voice a balm. He sprinkled holy water in the corners, a silent prayer for Elijah's protection, for Elena's strength, for justice, for Marcus. God has a plan, he'd offered, even if we don't always understand it. What kind of plan? Elena had retorted, bitterness sharp on her tongue. Involves killing a good man and nearly drowning a baby? The Reverend's eyes were kind, the kind of plan that turns evil into redemption. Sloane wanted to destroy this family. But look, Marcus left a legacy. You found a new purpose. This baby survived against all odds. Evil didn't win. Love won. Some days, Elena almost believed him. Other days, the darkness still threatened to swallow her whole. The court hearing arrived on a Tuesday. Elena wore the same dark suit she'd worn to Marcus's funeral, a silent armor. Marcy, her steadfast friend, accompanied her. The small courtroom was hushed, dominated by the judge, a woman in her 50s with severe, pulled-back gray hair, her expression unyielding, yet not devoid of kindness. The judge meticulously reviewed every document, certificates, references, evaluations, the home inspection report. Every page turned was a tremor in Elena's chest. Finally, the judge looked up. Miss Whitlock, she began, her voice measured, I have reviewed your case carefully. It is highly unusual for a 63-year-old woman to apply for custody of a newborn. But it is also unusual for a grandmother to save her grandson from drowning. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the courtroom's quiet. I have spoken with the hospital, with Child Protective Services, with your references. They all say the same thing. You are dedicated, loving, capable, and this baby was lucky you were there that day. Tears pricked at Elena's eyes, but she held them back. I have also read about the criminal case, about the suspicion that the baby's mother murdered the father and then tried to kill the baby. It is horrific, unthinkable. This child needs stability. He needs love. He needs someone to protect him. The pause stretched, an eternity. Then the judge delivered her verdict. Therefore, I am granting temporary custody to Eleanor Whitlock for a period of 6 months. During that time, there will be monthly visits from Child Protective Services, progress evaluations, and at the end of the 6 months, we will review whether custody becomes permanent. Congratulations, Grandma. The gavel struck, a sharp, decisive sound that shattered the tension. Elena gasped, air rushing back into her lungs. Tears streamed down her face, tears of relief, of gratitude, of fear, of everything. Marcy hugged her fiercely. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick. "Against all odds, you get to take him home." 3 days later, 6 weeks after pulling him from the cold lake, Elena brought Elijah home. Diane, ever practical, helped buckle him into the car seat, her voice calm as she reiterated instructions: how to hold him, how to feed him, how to recognize signs of distress. "He's going to be fine," she assured Elena, "and I'm just a phone call away." Elena drove home at a snail's pace, every bump in the road a jolt of terror, every slow-passing car a harbinger of dread. But they arrived safely. Inside, she walked Elijah into his new room, placing him gently into the crib. He looked impossibly small in the soft yellow space, so vulnerable, but he was breathing, he was alive, he was safe, for now. The first few weeks were a brutal gauntlet of exhaustion. Elena had forgotten the relentless demands of a newborn, the sleepless nights, the inexplicable cries, the constant gnawing panic that she was failing. At 30, she'd mothered Marcus with boundless youthful energy. At 63, every missed hour of sleep left her utterly shattered. Yet, amidst the chaos, there were moments of pure, unfiltered magic. Elijah's tiny hand grasping her finger, his cries quieting at the sound of her voice. Those dark, Marcus-like eyes opening to gaze at her as if she were his entire world. In those moments, every ounce of fatigue dissolved into profound purpose. Diane visited 3 times a week, a steady anchor. She taught Elena the forgotten tricks of early motherhood, easier burping techniques, the art of swaddling, how to decipher the subtle nuances of his cries. She became more than a nurse. She became a friend, a lifeline. "You're doing an incredible job," Diane would insist. But Elena felt anything but incredible. She felt utterly terrified. Every strange night sound made her jump. Every car lingering outside the house sent an icy tremor down her spine. Sloane was still out there. Despite police assurances that Sloane had likely fled the country, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a predator circling its prey. New deadbolts fortified every door. Security cameras blinked on the porch. An alarm system, linked directly to the police, offered a fragile sense of protection. $800 she couldn't spare, but Elijah's safety was priceless. Then, 3 weeks after bringing Elijah home, Elena found something. She was organizing Marcus's belongings, tucked away in cardboard boxes, clothes, books, papers. At the bottom of a forgotten box, her fingers brushed against worn leather. A journal. Marcus had kept a journal? Her hands trembled as she opened it. The initial entries were innocuous, years old, musings on work, casual observations about friends. But then the tone shifted. The entries began detailing the year he met Sloane. "I met someone today." Read an entry dated 4 years prior. "Her name is Sloane. She's beautiful, smart, mysterious. There's something about her I can't quite figure out. She intrigues me." Elena's heart ached as she read on. The entries about Sloane grew more frequent, more intense. Marcus was clearly captivated, deeply in love. But beneath the adoration, a subtle thread of unease began to surface. "Sometimes I feel like I don't really know her," read another. "She never talks about her family. When I ask, she changes the subject. It's like her life began the day we met." And then a chilling entry. "I caught Sloane looking through my bank statements. She said she was just curious, but something felt wrong. Why would she look at that without asking first?" The entry that followed, dated a month before his death, sent a cold dread through Elena's veins. "Sloane is pregnant. I found the test, But when I confronted her, she was furious. She said she doesn't want to have it, that it will ruin her life. How can she say that? It's our son. I changed my will today. Everything goes to the baby. I don't trust Sloan with the money, not after seeing how she spends $500 shoes, $1,000 bags. She always wants more. But a baby is not an accessory. It's a life, and I'm going to protect it at all costs. The last entry was dated the very day he died. Sloan threatened me today. She said I would regret pressuring her about the baby. I don't know what that means, but it scares me. I'm going to talk to Mom tomorrow. Tell her everything. Maybe she can help me figure out what to do. I just know I can't let Sloan hurt our son. I will protect him always. He never had the chance. He died that night. Eleanor closed the journal, tears blurring her vision. She hadn't known. She hadn't seen the danger, the fear, the desperate plea hidden in his words. I'm sorry, she whispered to the worn leather. I am so sorry, my love. I should have known. I should have seen something was wrong. But the past was immutable. All she could do was protect the future. The next day, Elena placed the journal in Ava's hands. The detective's jaw tightened with each page she read, her expression hardening into grim resolve. This is crucial evidence, Elena, Ava finally said, her voice low and steady. This shows premeditation. It shows motive. When we find Sloan, this will bury her. When are you going to find her? The question ripped from my throat, thin and sharp as a shard of glass. It's been almost 2 months. Detective Valerius ran a tired hand over his face. We're doing everything humanly possible, Mrs. Davies. But she's smart, evasive. She likely used false documents to cross the border. She could be anywhere. Anywhere. The word echoed hollowly in my mind for 3 days. Then, feeding little Elijah, my world tilted. The phone, an unfamiliar number. My thumb hovered, but an invisible hand compelled me to answer. Hello? A beat of silence, just the whisper of breath, then a voice I knew like a scar. Eleanor, it's Sloan. My blood didn't just run cold, it froze. Elijah, a warm weight in my arms, nearly slipped. My gaze darted around the nursery, half expecting her shadow to materialize in the corners. Where are you? The words were a strained whisper. That doesn't matter, Eleanor. What matters is I have something you desperately want, and you, in turn, have something I desire. You have nothing I want, I countered, my voice regaining a fragile strength. Her reply was a chillingly confident laugh. Oh, but I do. The truth, the real story behind Marcus's death, why I did what I did. I predict you're aching to know. A snarl escaped me. I already know the truth, Sloan. I read Marcus's journal. I know you murdered him for the money. You're a monster. Another cold, humorless laugh, like glass chimes in a gale. A monster? How utterly dramatic. You don't know anything, Eleanor. Marcus wasn't the saint you imagine. Don't you dare. The roar tore from my chest. Don't you dare speak ill of my son. Fine. Call the police. Go ahead. By the time you hang up, I'll be long gone. Burner phones, Eleanor. I'm not stupid. My mind became a whirlwind. Keep her talking. Record this. My free hand fumbled for my cell, pressing speaker, then record. What do you want, Sloan? I want my son. Your son? You tried to drown him. The accusation stung. It was a mistake, a moment of madness. I was scared, confused. I'd just given birth, alone. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm better now. I want my baby back. Never, over my dead body. That, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously calm pitch, can be arranged. Listen closely. I want Elijah, and I want Marcus's will money, the $200,000 from the insurance. plus everything he left in a fund for the baby. Another $300,000, $500,000 total. $500,000. Every cent Marcus had worked for, saved, intended for his son. And if I refuse? I asked, my blood turning to ice. Then I'll come for him. I'm his biological mother. Legally, I have more rights than you. And when they finally catch me, I'll say you stole my baby, that you threatened me, that you fabricated the entire Lake story to keep him. It'll be my word against yours, and I'm younger, more credible, more sympathetic. Dizziness swam over me, but I kept recording. How do I know you won't just kill us both and take everything anyway? You don't, but it's your only option. Bring the baby and the money to the old boathouse by the lake. You know the one, where you and Marcus used to fish. Tomorrow at midnight, alone. If I see any cops, I disappear. You'll never see me again. And eventually, I'll find a way to take Elijah from you anyway. Sloan, wait. But the line went dead. I stood there, trembling. Elijah nestled in one arm, the phone in the other. The recording, evidence. Sloan was alive. She'd threatened me. I called Ava immediately, sending her the audio clip. Perfect. Ava's voice crackled, laced with grim satisfaction. Exactly what we needed. Now, we set a trap. You'll go to that meeting, but we'll be there, hidden, waiting. When she shows, we grab her. What if something goes wrong? What if she sees you and runs again? Fear tightened around my chest. She won't see us. I promise, Eleanor. Snipers positioned, teams in the shadows. She won't escape this time. And Elijah, he stays with Diane, in a safe place. You're only pretending to bring him. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Just one more day. Survive one more day. Then Sloan would finally face justice. For Marcus, for Elijah, for all the pain. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. I watched Elijah breathe, memorizing each curve of his face, every tiny sigh. Just in case something went wrong. Just in case I never saw him again. Your daddy loved you, I whispered, tears blurring his perfect features. And I love you. Tomorrow we'll make sure you're safe, forever. The next day dragged, each minute an hour, each hour an eternity. At 9 a.m., Diane arrived. I packed Elijah's bag as if for a week-long journey, though I prayed he'd be back in hours. Diapers, formula, tiny clothes, his worn blanket. My hands shook placing each item. He'll be perfectly fine with me, Diane assured, taking Elijah. I have your number. The police have my address. No one will touch him. I promise. I kissed Diane's forehead, then Elijah's. His skin, soft like a petal, smelled of baby lotion and hope. I love you, little one, I whispered. Grandma will be back soon. Watching them leave, Diane's car disappearing down the street, felt like a piece of my soul tearing away. But he had to be far, safe, just in case. Ava arrived at 2 that afternoon, with 3 other officers in plain clothes, all silently armed. My living room transformed into a tactical command center. Laptops hummed, radios whispered, maps covered the dining table. Let's go over the plan again, Ava stated, spreading a map of the boathouse area. It's abandoned, 3 entrances. We'll cover all 3. She marked positions with swift red strokes. Snipers here and here, adjacent rooftops, clear view through the broken windows. Assault team back here, ready the moment we have visual confirmation. And me? My voice was far calmer than the tremor inside. You go in, talk to her, keep her talking. We need a confession admittance she killed Marcus, tried to kill Elijah. You'll wear a hidden mic. We'll record everything. One officer, a tall man in his 30s, produced a button-sized device. This clips just below your collarbone, transmits in real time. Panic button here, 3 quick presses, we're in, no matter what. He demonstrated. I practiced, 3 sharp taps. My life, my son's life, hinged on that. If she asks for the baby, tell her he's in the car. Say you want to talk first. Understand why. Appeal to her ego. People like Sloan love to talk about themselves. Hours blurred into a whirlwind of scenarios. Armed Sloan? Not alone? What if? My head throbbed. At 8 p.m., they made me eat a ham sandwich cardboard taste, but I swallowed every bite for the energy, for the alertness I'd need. At 10 p.m., the microphone was clipped, tested repeatedly with phrases, shouts, whispers. Remember, Eleanor. Ava's gaze was unflinching. You aren't alone in there. I'll hear every word. The team will be feet away. The slightest real danger, we're in. I won't let anything happen to you. I nodded, trying to believe her, fear tightening its cold coils in my gut. At 11:15, we moved. I drove my car. Ava, crouched low in the passenger seat, spoke into her radio. Teams positioned, snipers ready, perimeter secured. The boathouse appeared at 11:40, exactly as Marcus and I remembered it. Decaying, graffiti-scarred, skeletal windows. We'd fished here once, in simpler, happier times. Ava disappeared into the shadows, a ghost in the blind spot. I was alone. The clock read 11:55, 5 minutes. I closed my eyes, summoning Marcus's smile, his whispered mama, the phantom joy of him as a father. Then Elijah, his future, a life without fear, without threats, without shadows. Midnight. My phone vibrated. An unknown number. Go in alone now. The night air bit, my breath pluming. The main door of the boathouse was ajar, a black maw. I pushed it, and the groan echoed through the vast, empty space. Inside, darkness pressed against me, broken only by slivers of moonlight carving grotesque shapes through broken panes. Sloan? My voice was small, choked. Close the door. Her voice, from the depths of the shadows. I did. Slowly, my eyes adjusted. She stood in the center, a silhouette in dark jeans and a hooded sweatshirt. Thinner, her hair a jarring short blonde. But it was her. You came, she said, almost surprised. You said you wanted to talk. I said I wanted my son and the money. Where are they? I want answers first. Why did you kill Marcus? Why did you try to kill Elijah? Her laugh, that same cold chime. Why do you think, Eleanor? For the money. Marcus was a foolish romantic. All love and family and future. I wanted freedom, travel, life, not tied to a house and a crying baby. Then why marry him? He was an engineer, good salary, savings, life insurance, an investment. I planned to wait 5 years, divorce him, take half. But then, a bitter twist in her voice, I got pregnant, ruined everything. The words clawed, venomous from her lips. Everyone burned me. You told him you didn't want the baby. A chill snaked down my spine. Of course I hadn't. But then came Marcus, his devotion to the unborn child, twisting him into someone I barely recognized. He'd altered his will, every cent earmarked for the baby. Suddenly, a new path materialized. Simple, brutal. If he died while I was pregnant, the insurance policy, a cool $200,000, would be mine. The baby would inherit the rest. The solution clicked into place. Eliminate Marcus, birth the child, then eliminate the child. Keep everything. She spoke, each word a hammer blow, confessing it all. Every syllable recorded, transmitted. The police were listening, I knew, but I needed more. The details. You hired Calvin to sabotage the brakes. $2,000. A bargain considering I made $200,000 from the insurance. The best investment of my life. My stomach lurched. The baby, her own flesh and blood. An obstacle, nothing more. She'd birthed him alone in a rented cabin, paid cash, no one knowing. Baggy clothes, averted gazes. For a moment she'd considered abandoning him. But then, the lake our lake, where Marcus and I had shared so many quiet afternoons. It seemed poetic, she hissed, to end everything where your little family tradition started. A wave of nausea, then red-hot rage, consumed me. All the hatred in the world seemed to coalesce around the woman standing before me. But you failed, I managed, my voice a raw whisper. I saved him. A grim smile touched her lips. Yes, that was annoying, but it doesn't matter because now I'm gonna finish the job. Her eyes, cold and sharp, fixed on mine. Where is Elijah? Ellie, I'm not giving him to you. It wasn't a question anymore. A glint of dark metal flashed as she pulled a small black pistol from her sweatshirt. It pointed unwavering at my chest. Last chance. Where is my son? I slammed the panic button once, twice, a third time. You're never gonna touch him, I spat, defiance burning through my fear. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Time seemed to stretch, elastic and agonizing. I saw the flash, heard the shot. A searing pain blossomed in my shoulder, hot and bruising. I stumbled backward. Suddenly, the boathouse erupted. Doors splintered open. Blinding light sliced through the gloom. Shouts echoed. Police! Drop the weapon! Get on the ground now! I watched Sloane spin, the guns of the officers converging on her. For a terrifying second, I thought she'd fire again, force them to kill her. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the weapon lowered. It clattered to the floor. Her hands rose, empty. 3 officers tackled her, pinning her face down, cuffs clicking shut. She screamed, a torrent of insults and threats, but it was a muffled, distant sound. She was arrested. It was over. Ava knelt beside me, her voice trembling. Ellie, stay with me. I'm fine, I rasped, though my shoulder throbbed with agony. You got her. Tell me you got her. We got her. It's over now. Stay still. The ambulance is on the way. I closed my eyes, a profound exhaustion washing over me. It was enough. Finally. I woke again in the sterile white of a hospital room, yet this time no despair clung to me, only a profound sense of relief, of peace. My shoulder ached where the bullet had grazed the muscle, a near miss for the bone. Lucky, the doctor had said, 1 inch to the left, and it would have been your heart. Diane sat by my bed, Elijah nestled in her arms. As my eyes fluttered open, she smiled, a radiant warmth spreading across her face. Look who woke up, she whispered, leaning closer. Someone missed you a lot. I reached for Elijah with my good arm, cradling him close. He smelled of baby powder and a fragile, burgeoning hope. He cooed, those tiny, joyful sounds babies make. Hello, my love, I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. Grandma's fine. Everything's fine now. Ava arrived an hour later, a bouquet of flowers in one hand, a tired but triumphant smile on her lips. How do you feel? Like someone who's been shot, I said, a faint laugh escaping me. But alive. What happened to Sloane? Arrested, charged with first-degree murder for Marcus, attempted homicide for Elijah, attempted homicide for you, plus a laundry list of other crimes, conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. The words, sweet as honey, were justice finally served. The recording worked perfectly. She confessed everything. Her lawyer tried to plead coercion, that you forced her to say those things, but the jury saw the whole video. They saw her pull the gun, shoot. They had no mercy. 30 minutes of deliberation, guilty on all counts. The following months were a slow, arduous journey of recovery. Physical therapy for my shoulder was brutal but necessary. Diane was a constant presence, helping with Elijah when my injured arm couldn't manage. Reverend Thomas brought warm, comforting meals. Neighbors I barely knew appeared with casseroles and kind words. "You're a hero," said the lady from down the street. "What you did for that baby, risking your life like that." But I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a grandmother doing what any grandmother would, protecting her own. 2 months after Sloane's capture, I stood before the judge again. This time, her expression was gentle, a small smile playing on her lips as she reviewed the documents. "Miss Whitlock," she began, "I have reviewed all the reports from the last 6 months, the Child Protective Services visits, Elijah's medical evaluations, the progress reports, and I must say, I am impressed." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Elijah is thriving in your care. He is reaching all his developmental milestones. He is healthy, happy, loved. You have proven yourself more than capable despite the challenges. Therefore, I am granting full and permanent custody of Elijah to Eleanor Whitlock, effective immediately. Furthermore, given that the biological mother is incarcerated for life and has forfeited all parental rights, I authorize adoption proceedings if you wish to pursue them." Adoption? To make him legally mine, not just his grandmother with custody, but his legal mother. "Yes," I said, without a second's hesitation. "Yes, I want to adopt him." "Then so it shall be officially. Congratulations." The gavel fell, a crisp, final sound, and suddenly, the immense weight I had carried for months lifted, dissipating like smoke. It was official. Elijah was mine. No one could ever take him away again. I walked out of the courthouse. Elijah nestled securely in my arms. He was 8 months old now, chunky and joyous. He smiled, 2 tiny teeth gleaming. He laughed when I bounced him gently, tugging at my hair with chubby hands. Diane and Reverend Thomas waited outside, their faces beaming. They embraced me, and all 3 of us wept tears of pure joy there on the courthouse steps. "You did it," Diane whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Against all odds, you did it." That night, I prepared a special dinner as special as it could be, with a baby demanding constant attention. Diane and Reverend Thomas joined us. We ate roast chicken and rice, toasting with apple juice, none of us drinking alcohol. "To Elijah," Reverend Thomas said, raising his glass, "to his bright future." "To Marcus," I added, "who's watching us from somewhere, proud of his son." "To love," Diane finished, "which always conquers evil." We drank, we ate, we laughed. Elijah, banging on his high chair, squealed with delight, not understanding the specifics, but feeling the happiness that permeated the room. Months bled into years. Elijah grew. He started walking. At 11 months, his first word was Nana. I cried. At 2, he was a whirlwind, running through the house. At 3, he started preschool. Every milestone was a miracle, every day a precious gift. I spoke of Marcus constantly, showing him photos, telling him stories. "Your daddy was a good man," I'd say, "brave. He loved you even before he met you. He gave his life to protect you." "Daddy hero," Elijah would echo in his sweet, small voice. "Yes, my love, Daddy was a hero, and you'll grow up to be as good, as brave, as loving as he was." I never mentioned Sloane. That truth would come later, when he was older, when he could truly understand. For now, he only needed to know he was loved, wanted, and fiercely fought for. On Elijah's 5th birthday, our backyard teemed with laughter and light. Balloons, cake, presents, a kaleidoscope of childhood joy. Elijah, a blur of energy, chased his friends, his laughter ringing out, so full of life, so different from the still blue baby I had pulled from the lake 5 years ago. Diane sat beside me on the porch, watching the celebration. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "That day," I admitted. How I could have been 5 minutes later. How I could have not looked out the window at that exact moment. How everything could have been different. But it wasn't, Diane countered, her hand resting warmly on mine. You found him. You saved him. It was your destiny. Or Marcus's, I mused. Sometimes I think he guided my eyes to the lake that day, that he somehow knew I would be there, that he could trust me to protect his son. Perhaps, Diane said, a gentle smile. Or perhaps you're just an incredibly brave woman who refused to give up. That night, after the last guest had departed, after Elijah, utterly exhausted, had finally succumbed to sleep, I sat alone in the quiet living room. My gaze drifted to the photos on the wall. Marcus as a baby, Marcus at his graduation, Marcus on his wedding day, and beside them, the new additions. Elijah, newborn in the hospital, Elijah taking his first wobbly steps, Elijah on his first day of school. 2 generations, connected by a love that transcended time, separated by tragedy, united by a fierce will to survive. We did it, Marcus, I whispered to his photograph. Your son is safe. He's happy. He's growing up strong and good, just like you wanted. And though I knew he couldn't answer, I felt a warmth, a profound peace, as if he were there, proud, grateful, finally at rest. Maybe you would have given up in my place. Perhaps you would have thought yourself too old, too tired, too broken. Or maybe you would have done exactly the same thing, because that's what love does. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible. It makes you fight when everything seems lost. It makes you find hope in the deepest darkness. I don't know what the future holds. I know there will be challenges. I know there will be hard days. And raising a child at my age won't be easy. But I also know that every single day with Elijah is a gift. Every smile, every hug, every I love you, Nana. The soft glow of the nightlight bathes young Elijah's room, a sanctuary that once cradled his father. As I watch him, a vow echoes in the silent space. The promise I made to Marcus, to myself, that brutal day by the lake, to protect this child, to love him fiercely, to never surrender. Some whisper of luck, others of fate, but I know it was Marcus, guiding my gaze to the window, pulling me from the depths of my own grief. That glint of metal, a submerged suitcase, the faint choked cry rising from the water, then Elijah's tiny defiant heart beating against mine. Nothing would ever be the same. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. Grateful for the life breathing under my roof, for the echo of Marcus's eyes in his son's face, his laughter now filling these old walls. Grateful for the chance to love again, to find purpose in the wreckage of loss, to discover something precious in the ashes. Tragedy is an uninvited guest, knocking when least expected, snatching away loved ones, cherished dreams, the very ground beneath our feet. But the true measure of us is in our response. I could have drowned in sorrow after Marcus's death, recoiled in terror at the sight of Sloane's monstrous act, succumbed to the lie that I was too old, too broken to be a mother again. Instead, I chose to fight, to love, to believe that even from the deepest despair, new life can bloom. And it did. His name is Elijah. Today he races toward 5. Tomorrow toward 6, and someday he will stand a man, 20, 30, 40, his own dreams unfolding. I may not witness every step, but I planted the seeds. I gave him roots, strong and deep, and wings to soar. I told him of his father, of Marcus's fierce love even before birth, of the courage it took to defend him. That, I know, will be enough. Some nights, as the house settles into silence, marked only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock, I find myself looking back. The woman I was shattered by grief, haunted by ghosts, adrift without purpose, She is almost a stranger now. The woman who chases a 5-year-old through sun-drenched grass, who covers the refrigerator door with crayon masterpieces, who kisses scraped knees and banishes imaginary monsters from beneath the bed. That woman is stronger than I ever conceived. It began with a choice: to run toward the lake, not away, to pull open that waterlogged suitcase despite the terror freezing my heart, to fight for a future when the weight of the past threatened to crush me. It wasn't easy. There were days my back ached from carrying him, nights blurred by relentless cries, moments when doubt gnawed at my resolve. Was I selfish to embrace motherhood again at this age? But then Elijah would smile, a sunbeam, or whisper, "Nana," in that sweet, trusting voice, or fall asleep in my arms, and I knew I had done exactly what I was meant to do. Ava and Diane remain threads in our tapestry. Ava drops by with gifts, her quiet check-ins a comfort. Diane, almost an aunt, takes Elijah to the park, teaching him the names of birds and trees, wrapping him in an extra layer of love. Reverend Thomas, during his Christmas blessing, calls Elijah living proof of God's mysterious ways, turning anguish into purpose. And Sloane. She languishes, her days a stark contrast to Elijah's vibrant life. Sometimes I wonder if regret ever touches her, if a flicker of maternal love ever stirred in that cold heart. Then I remember the vacant cruelty in her eyes as she cast the suitcase into the water, and I know the answer. Some souls are simply incapable of love. Sloane saw Elijah not as a miracle, but as an obstacle to her own desires. Her loss truly became my gain. Every morning, the soft thud of small feet on the hall floor announces the dawn. My bedroom door bursts open, and Elijah, hair tousled, Marcus's bright eyes shining, scrambles onto the bed. "Good morning, Nana," he shouts, his arms a warm embrace. In that moment, every ache, every sacrifice, every shadowed memory recedes. I would do it all again. Face Sloane, take the shot, fight an entire system, just for this. People call me incredible, brave, extraordinary, but I am simply a grandmother, doing what grandmothers do, protecting her grandson at any cost. The true hero is Marcus, who saw through Sloane's veneer, who altered his will, planned for his unborn son's safety, and ultimately paid the ultimate price for his love. The true miracle is Elijah, who clutched to life, who brought light back into a house shadowed by grief. I am just the bridge, the guardian of their story, the protector of their future, and that is more than enough. It is everything.